If the New Orleans Saints are going to be a competitive team in the NFC South this upcoming season, I think they're going to need more than just Brian Brzee from the 2023 draft class to step up for New Orleans. So who will that player be? Could it be Isaiah Foskey? Could it be Kendre Miller? Could it be A.T. Perry? Could it be Jordan Howden? Could it be Nick Saldiveri? Let's discuss all that right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Vogel, and as always, we're brought to you by Scott Fickner, injury lawyers. You've been injured in any kind of accident, car, truck, 18-wheeler, or hurt offshore. Scott Fickner handles it all. You give him a call at 504-500-1111 for a free consultation. That's right, a free consultation. They'll always fight for the win. So let's get into it. I mentioned the 2023 draft class for the Saints, and I feel like it's an appropriate time, right? We're about a month, a little less than a month out from the 2024 draft, and there's going to be so much talk about who the Saints need to add and why this draft class is imperative for them to be a contender in the NFC South, because I think the Saints, with the lackluster moves they made in free agency and just trying to be a little bit more financially responsible, which I think is a good thing, they didn't add enough talent. So the Saints need to go out there, add talent in the draft, but that's not going to be enough. They're going to need the guys who are entering that second year to show that they've improved, that they've taken that jump from a role player to a good player, or a bench guy to a role player, whatever it may be. That said, when we have this discussion that we're about to get into, I just want to disclose this before people say, Chris, what about Brian Brzee? Brian Brzee's a really good player. I thought he showed a lot of potential. That's why I'm not going to talk about Brian Brzee today, because I think Brian Brzee already showed he can be a good player for the Saints. I would categorize him as an immediate impact guy for New Orleans already. So I'm not worried about Brian Brzee. I think Brian Brzee actually is that player that you hope goes from good to great. And maybe he will. So I am excited about that. But I want to focus on the other parts of this rookie class, because when I looked at the Saints 2023 class, I think that the talent is there, but there's also a lot to be desired, specifically about availability and production. And I think if New Orleans is going to take that next step, I think they're going to need the production aspect to ramp up in a major way. So let's get into the names and let's talk about who needs to step up for the Saints. And I'm going to start off with the big one. I know you usually kind of save the best for last or the most important for last. I'm going to jump right into this because this guy has to produce in 2024. It's Isaiah Foskey. I think you look at Isaiah Foskey's numbers, the tape, the production. Dude was good at Notre Dame, very good. And when the Saints drafted him in the second round last year, I was pretty amped up about the pick. I think no more questions about, is he a small school? No, it's Notre Dame. No more questions about availability. Dude played for Notre Dame constantly. And then, though, the season starts, doesn't make much of an impact. And the worst part about it is doesn't make much of an impact on a defensive line that could have used him. You know, the Saints didn't have a murderer's row of defensive ends. They had a really lackluster group. Outside of Carl Granderson, they really didn't have a lot of guys you can trust on the edge. So I would have loved to see Isaiah Foskey make a big impact as a rookie. Unfortunately, all you got, 9 tackles and 83 snaps on defense. That is not going to cut it. That is not good enough. And I think for New Orleans right now, when we have questions about Cam Jordan's age, we have questions about Chase Young's neck injury, and we got questions about if Peyton Turner can even stay on the football field, you need Isaiah Foskey to step up in 2024. I don't think this is a want or whatever. I think this is a need for the Saints to have Isaiah Foskey come out there and give you something. Because I think if Foskey gives you a little something, hopefully Peyton Turner just gives you a little bit of production, and then you got Carl Granderson do his thing. Yeah, it's not as bad. But if Foskey gives you nothing, if Peyton Turner's hurt again, you're relying on Chase Young coming off neck surgery, or Cam Jordan, who is in the last stage of his career, to give you really good production. And I think that's banking on too much. And I think that's where you get put in a tough spot if that's where the Saints end up. So Foskey, for me, out of all these guys we're going to talk about, because there are 5 in particular that I want to focus on, Foskey is the one that I look at and I say, man, he's got to produce next season. And if he doesn't, then we got to start having the conversation about whether or not they wasted a second round pick. And I don't want to get to that point yet. I want to hope that Foskey could turn it around and show that his rookie year, he needed that time to learn, and now he's got time to produce. And maybe that is the case. I hope it is, but there's no doubt about it. Saints need their pass rush to get going, and he would help in a major way if the light bulb kind of clicks for him as a pro. The second guy that I want to talk about is someone that we didn't mention at all rookie season. And I said it's all about availability. Are you on the football field or not? And when it comes to Nick Saldiveri, he was not. And I think what makes Nick Saldiveri's situation so compelling is the fact that I do not trust the Saints offensive line in the slightest. Yes, I know Eric McCoy is good. I know Cesar Ruiz, all right, didn't have a good 2023 season, but technically right now he's healthy. He's under contract. He's probably the second most reliable guy for the Saints right now, and that kind of shows you how bad their O-line is at the moment. Can't trust Ryan Ramczyk at right tackle right now due to injury. Don't know what you got going on at left guard, and do you really trust James Hurst? The man accepted a pay cut, and I think when you accept a pay cut at this point in your career, you kind of know it's the best offer you got on the table. So not a lot to look forward to at left guard. And left tackle, is Trevor Penning going to play? Are they going to draft his replacement? Probably the latter. So 3 spots on the Saints O-line right now, you can't trust. So this is an opportunity for a guy, Nick Saldiveri, who has versatility and had that at Old Dominion, to come in and maybe make an impact. Now, he only appeared in 4 games last season, only got 18 snaps on offense, got a little bit more on special teams, but we haven't seen anything from him to say that he can go out there and make an impact. But he is a player that the Saints might need to rely on, whether it's lack of depth, whether it's them not having the resources to go out there and be big spenders in free agency this year, which they weren't. So he is the second player I'd focus on in this draft class because you got to put an emphasis on being good in the trenches. And the more I look at the Saints roster and the more I try to be optimistic about what this team could be, the less I am because I keep looking at them in the trenches and going, oh, crap, like they might get pushed around on both sides of the ball. And if that happens, it's hard to imagine them being, I'm not going to say competitive, but like super competitive, like better than 7-10, 8-9, which is kind of where I have them at the moment. So Nick Saldiveri, you are on the clock, my friend. You got to be better in 2024. Luckily for him, it's not going to be a huge jump that he has to take because he really didn't give the Saints much due to, like I said, played 18 snaps on offense. We didn't really see much. So Nick Saldiveri, no doubt about it, you got to hope that he takes a big step in 2024.
The thrill and excitement of March Mania is here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets with any college basketball bet. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code BOOT. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 instantly in bonus bets. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code BOOT. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/promos for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
So let's get to the third guy on this list. And I actually think this is the point where we reach players that actually did show you a little bit of something during their rookie season. And for various reasons, you're not ready to say that they're going to be the next big time player for the Saints for various reasons. And we can discuss those in just a minute. So let's get into number 3. And this isn't saying that he's not important. Man, I think he might actually have to play a really important role for this team, but at least we've seen enough for him that I think the questions aren't as loud. And that is Jordan Howden. Out of Minnesota, rookie season, thought he was fine, right? And you look at the production, 43 tackles, 5 pass breakups with a sack and a forced fumble. I think that's pretty good production for a 5th round pick. I think that's pretty good. Now, he's going to be asked to do a little bit more than he did this past season because no Marcus May. Saints have not yet added another safety. And if you want, you can use that as a vote of confidence in Jordan Howden. Maybe that is what the Saints are trying to tell you. And if so, great. I would be more than okay with that. I can't say for certain that is what's going on, though. There's a very good chance here that the Saints might add a safety through the draft or maybe wait for the market to kind of get a little bit cheaper and then add a veteran. But Jordan Howden is going to be asked to take on a bigger role. Just look at the depth chart right now. It's not very talented. It's not loaded with depth. So I think that you are going to see a guy get asked to do more. I think the good thing about Jordan Howden is throughout his career at college, had so many snaps, so much repetition there that you feel like he could take on a bigger role, and he is smart enough to handle it in Dennis Allen's defense. Again, we have to see. But if I were to say, in terms of my confidence level in the first 3 guys that I just mentioned, I would be the most confident in Jordan Howden to produce next year between him and Foskey, or among him, Foskey, and Saldiveri. I'd go Howden as being the most comfortable taking that next step. So that's the third guy I'm going to mention. Number 4, he also falls in the same category as Howden for me in terms of, I think they could play. It's just a matter of how good can they be. There's a spot for them in the NFL, but can you take that next step? And that guy is A.T. Perry. A.T. Perry for me is a very interesting study because out of Wake Forest, a lot of us liked him. I vividly remember John Hendricks, also for us here at Buku Media, loved A.T. Perry. Loved A.T. Perry. So when the Saints make that draft day trade with the Broncos and draft A.T. Perry, I know John was all hyped up about it. Don't blame him one bit. A.T. Perry put up great numbers at Wake Forest. Now, A.T. Perry, beginning of the season, really didn't get much time. And I mean, where did he fit? You had Chris Olave, you had Michael Thomas, you had Rashid Shaheed. Michael Thomas goes down. A.T. Perry starts to do his thing. So A.T. Perry, this past season, had 246 receiving yards, if I got the math down correctly. 200 of those yards came December 3rd and on. So in the last month of the season, when he finally got playing time, the guy showed you that he could be a difference maker. Think of 2 touchdown games, had a touchdown against the Rams on a deep throw, had a touchdown against the Vikings. Like, the dude can make plays. And I think what he gives you is a little bit of a bigger wide receiver, which the Saints can use, because I think Olave and Shaheed are more speed finesse type of guys, particularly Olave for sure. And obviously Shaheed is really a speed type of guy because you brought him in for special teams, and it just so happens that the dude is a good receiver all around. But I think that A.T. Perry gives you that third option at the moment. Saints haven't really done enough to push him off that spot. You know, you bring in Cedric Wilson. I think Cedric Wilson's a good vet, knows Kubiak's system, so that is a good thing. But I still think A.T. Perry right now would be my favorite for the number 3 wide receiver, unless the Saints add another one through the draft or maybe sign one like a Hunter Renfrow. I would probably say A.T. Perry is your 3, and I think A.T. Perry showed enough down the stretch, and there was a pretty good, I'd say, chemistry and symmetry between him and Derek Carr that you could see him and envision him making big plays next year because, let's be honest, the last 5 games of the season, he did just that. So I think there is reason to be optimistic about A.T. Perry. And if you were sitting here today and you read the question for this podcast and say, which 2023 draft pick for the Saints is going to have a breakout year in 2024, and you said, I think it's A.T. Perry, who am I to disagree with you when he showed the last 5 games of the year that he can be an impact guy for the Saints? So the 5th and final player I'm going to mention kind of falls in the same category, but kind of doesn't because of injury concerns, and that is Kendre Miller out of TCU. I think Kendre Miller is a great talent. I think he's got the makings of an impact player in this league. I think that when you see him out there and he runs the football, it's different from anything else the Saints currently have in their backfield. I know Alvin's a very good established player, and honestly, you can make an argument the last 3 years ruined what should have been a Hall of Fame career for Alvin. And I'm not diminishing that Alvin's still a good football player, because I think Alvin is a good football player still at this stage in his career. But when you watch Alvin run, when you watch Jamal Williams run, and then you watch Kendre Miller run in the final game of the season, cannot tell me that Kendre Miller did not look like a different back from the other 2. He looked more explosive. His cuts looked more violent. His vision looked pretty damn good. And again, it's one game. It's 73 yards and a touchdown against the Falcons. I know that is not the end-all, be-all for this player. But it was a glimpse to what he could be if he is healthy. Now, it's a huge if. That knee injury since his last year at TCU has been a concern. And I don't know if we can just say because he had a full offseason out of rest that it's going to be magically healed. It doesn't work that way sometimes. But I do think that Kendre Miller has the talent to be a difference maker for the Saints. And I think it's all about whether or not he can stay healthy. And I hope in his case he does stay healthy and that we get to see Kendre Miller be an impact player for New Orleans for a long time. But there is that concern. And while I have questions about whether or not Nick Saldiveri can play and whether or not Isaiah Foskey can play, I don't have that question about Kendre Miller. My question is, can he stay healthy? And if he can, he's going to give the Saints a different element on offense. And I think they need that, particularly with the new system. And you know they're going to run the football with Kubiak. I would like to see Kendre Miller really get his chance to shine. And I think him and Alvin could make a really nice 1-2 punch in that backfield. So if I were to pick one, because I think that it's so important to put an emphasis on being good at the line of scrimmage, I would actually say either Foskey or Nick Saldiveri are the most important ones. Because if Saldiveri's good, you got an extra O-lineman. If Foskey's good, there's less pressure on Cam Jordan, less pressure on Chase Young, better opportunity for this D-line to be good. That said, if I were to go from a confidence meter, I think Kendre Miller, A.T. Perry, and Jordan Howden are far more likely to have bigger years for the Saints because I know they can play in the NFL. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes that these 3 guys can make plays. But let's just go with the one that I feel the most confident about, and maybe this is me being a little naive. I think Kendre Miller, if healthy, and I'm just going to go under the assumption that he is healthy, and you know what happens when you assume. It's not good for you or me. I think that he will be the guy that has the breakout year for the Saints. It's not my want, whatever, my rankings. I think Foskey is far more important because the D-line needs to be better. But you know what? The Saints running game needs to be better. The Saints running game was not good. It was very bland under Pete Carmichael. You bring in Clint Kubiak. You hope that Kendre Miller's finale against the Falcons wasn't just a fun game. It was a sign of things to come, and I hope it is. But I want to know what you guys have to think about those 5 players I mentioned from the 2023 draft class. Do you think any of them are going to have breakout seasons? If so, who is your pick? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you. As always, guys, make sure to subscribe to Boo Crew Media for more videos like this, and stay tuned for more content from the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.